Shoot 'em up games are awesome. They're so awesome, in fact, that I had to divide my one list into two top 10s. This list covers the 10 best shoot 'em ups that feature a guy holding a gun blasting enemies. And the other list, which will be annotated on screen at the end of the video, covers the 10 best ship-based shoot 'em up games. So which games are the best run and gun shmups? The rules for this list are simple. First, only one entry per franchise, so don't expect 10 entries from the same series. And second, this list will not contain any games that are simply platformers with shooting elements. This is a 2D shoot 'em up list, so we won't have any games like Mega Man on here, even though Mega Man is great. So without further ado, hey, I'm Asanyo Tran, and these are our top 10 shooty shmups. Bang bang! It doesn't get more classic than the arcade, and in 1988, no game was more indicative of the times than our number 10 entry, Narc. The game features both wanton violence and shameless drug PSAs due to the era in which it was created. With solid gameplay mechanics and themes built around the war on drugs, Narc was a bizarre but fun arcade game that really delivered the message with extreme prejudice. Winners don't use drugs. Too bad the war on drugs was a massive failure. 9. Gunsmoke was a popular television series that ran for an unprecedented 20 years, from 1955 to 1975. The show, starring James Arness and also Burt Reynolds, has nothing to do with the NES game, which will henceforth be referred to as Gun.Smoke. Gun.Smoke is a Western-themed vertical 2D shoot-'em-up game that's just awesome. There's a bunch of power-ups, there are multiple different guns to use, and the overall theme of the game is fantastically realized. Gun.Smoke's towns have in-game shops that provide weapons and usable items, but they also provide the wanted signs to spawn the level boss. There are 6 different bosses throughout the game, and each boss has different tactics and weapons at their disposal, which really tests your reflexes. While the arcade Gun.Smoke is super cool and has more bosses and power-ups, I really just have so much nostalgia for the NES version that I gotta put that one on this list. But if you have an opportunity to play either the arcade or NES version of Gun.Smoke, go for it. It's seriously awesome. 8. The most recent entry on our list, Cuphead, is amazing. That classic 1930s Fleischer Studios animation and art style is just phenomenal, and the gameplay is as solid and dependable as any old-school run-and-gun game. Cuphead encompasses all the best qualities of old-school shoot-'em-up games, which means it's frantic and frenetic while remaining accessible and engaging, and the controls are tight, meaning if you die, you know it was user error. You can jump in, try again, and hopefully succeed. While I don't think Cuphead is as difficult as people make it out to be, it's definitely not for the faint of heart, and that balance puts it right up top as one of the best games in the genre. 7. Now we're talking. Smash TV is iconic. That top-down shoot-'em-up style, that cheesy 90s aesthetic with a game show setup and prizes that include microwaves and VCRs, that sweet, sweet local co-op gameplay, damn Smash TV is good. As part of a legacy of amazing top-down shooters that began with Robotron 2084 in the arcades and built towards the Geometry Wars series and then beyond, every single version of Smash TV is fantastic. The NES version is one of the few games that utilize the NES 4-score, allowing 2-player co-op wherein each player uses one controller D-pad to move and the other controller D-pad to fire, mirroring the twin-stick shooter design seen in arcades. The SNES version Super Smash TV had each of the 4 face buttons of the SNES fire in a different direction, which is also really great. A true 90s shmup classic. If you haven't played any version of Smash TV, you're really doing yourself a disservice. 6. Get yourself some friends and come on down to the arcade. It's Cowboys of Moo Mesa. Cowboys of Moo Mesa features up to 4-player co-op, so you and 3 friends can get together and play as your favorite characters from the show, such as Colorado Kid, Dakota Dude, Marshall, Moo Montana, and Buffalo Bull. Shooting guns, throwing dynamite, tomahawk, stampede! All this and more in Cowboys of Moo Mesa. Available only at your local arcade. Developed and licensed by Konami. 5. Pocky and Rocky is the most horrifyingly difficult shooter of all time. Like, no joke, this shooter is hard. Unlike most shooters, you can control your forward progression, which gives you significantly more freedom of control. But don't get ahead of yourselves because Pocky and Rocky will destroy you. There are a handful of power-ups, and power-ups can be stacked together for even more power, and you can even play with a friend, but none of that makes it any easier. In fact, playing together actually makes the game harder in a way. You have to be constantly aware of each other, or else you'll bump into one another and send your teammate randomly careening around the screen, which usually ends in a death. And there's a sequel! Both games are amazing, so I'm going to put both Pocky and Rocky and Pocky and Rocky 2 at number 5. But I'm being serious. Both these games are insanely difficult. Play at your own risk. 4. Now we're getting out the big guns. One of the most legendary run-and-gun shmup series of all time, Metal Slug is a beast. The Neo Geo's premier shoot-'em-up game, Metal Slug was a standout both at the arcades and at home. So which Metal Slug is it gonna be? For our money, look no further than Metal Slug 3. Easy to play, better with friends, multiple transformations, destructible scenery, varying gameplay, melee attacks, and, new to the series, branching paths that allow you to challenge yourself by going the longer or harder way en route to the boss. Metal Slug 3 encompasses everything that made the series great and added new features that further refined and improved the experience that SNK fans have loved for years. Take your pick on which one's best. A lot of people say Metal Slug X or even Metal Slug 2, and honestly, both those games are absolutely great as well. If you love those more, then you're also correct. But for us, we gotta give the nod to Metal Slug 3. 3. Treasure, the king of shoot-'em-up games. Treasure has crafted a supremely impressive resume of shoot-'em-up games, and the number 3 entry on our list is arguably their best, Gunstar Heroes. At first glance, the game is unremarkable, but once you start experimenting with the power-ups, you'll find exactly why people have named Gunstar Heroes one of the greatest games of all time. There are 4 power-up archetypes, and the power-ups can be stacked much like other games, but Gunstar Heroes gets really good when you begin stacking different power-up archetypes together. There are a ton of combinations available, yielding everything from the homing laser beams to what is basically a lightsaber. This allows you to play through the game multiple times over and still have a different experience each time. Gunstar Heroes was so good that it even got a sequel, Gunstar Super Heroes, which is one of the greatest Game Boy Advance games ever made. However, Gunstar Super Heroes did not sell very well, which means we likely won't get another Gunstar game. That's a shame, because again, Gunstar Heroes is absolutely one of the greatest games ever made. And it's still only number 3 on our list. 2. When it comes to run-and-gun games, accept no substitutes for Contra. The most well-known series in the entire genre, Contra is not famous for just being a fantastic game. No. Contra has transcended the genre by instilling within millions of players and former players one memory, one motion, one code. Up, down, left, right, BA for one-player start, for co-op, select start. The myth, the legend, the code. Widely known as a Konami code, Contra was so popular that legions of people still call it the Contra code. The code gives you 30 extra lives, allowing you ample opportunity to attempt and eventually defeat the game's various enemies and bosses. While Contra was originally considered very difficult, the game is a cakewalk compared to many games in the genre today. Many of its difficult segments are due to cheap design and bottlenecking rather than a legitimate challenge. But it's all doable, and it's doable even without the code, which means it's not unfair. Cheap, sure, but not unfair. And while there are games in the series that are better than the first, hardcore, the original Contra is renowned for a reason. It's challenging, it's co-op, it's fun. The original Contra is that damn good. Alright, let's gun it through this recap before we get to our number 1 entry. Number 10, Narc. Number 9, Gun.Smoke. Number 8, Cuphead. Number 7, Smash TV. Number 6, Cowboys of Moo Mesa. Number 5, Pocky and Rocky 1 and 2. Number 4, Metal Slug 3. Number 3, Gunstar Heroes. And number 2, Contra. Sunset Riders! Whee! Ah, this game is awesome! Look at the graphics and the gunplay and the music and the western theme and the settings and everything! Ah, this game is so awesome! 2 to 4 player co-op in arcades, 2 player co-op at home and either major console, 2 different power-ups you can whip simultaneously, diverse enemy archetypes with unique and sometimes interactive weaponry, environmental hazards, mounted guns, Easter eggs, the list goes on! What else can I say about Sunset Riders that hasn't already been said? This game is so amazingly awesome! You gotta play it right now! This is what 2D side-scrolling shoot-'em-ups should be! Obviously, the arcade version is amazing, but even the Genesis version, which is very different from the arcade version, is still pretty good. Despite having fewer levels, playable characters, and bosses, the Genesis version has a a head-to-head versus mode, new bonus minigames, and 2 shoot buttons, one for fixed shooting and one for run and gun. Amazingly, the arcade and SNES versions are shockingly similar. You gotta remember, this is at a time when arcade games were significantly better on a technical level than home console games, so Sunset Riders was way ahead of the curve in that regard as well. No matter what platform you're using, it should be patently obvious. Sunset Riders is the absolute pinnacle of the genre. Be sure to check out the other video that pairs with this one, Top 10 Shippity Shmups. We cover the best ship-based shoot-'em-up games and it's annotated on screen right now. Also subscribe, click the bell icon, and throw us a like. Thanks!